What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 58 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. Today, we're both going to be ranking our top 10 offensive players of the 2025 NBA season. In our last two episodes, we did the top 10 scorers and then the top 10 playmakers. I would suggest, if you haven't, go listen to those first to kind of get an idea on where our head's at regarding each player and kind of the methodology that goes into each of those lists. Because at the end of the day, Sean, we were talking about this a little bit off camera or off recording, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, the top 10 offensive players is going to be pretty close to just like the best combination of the scorers list and the playmakers list. Obviously, there is other stuff that goes into offense. Like, I kind of viewed playmaking as an all-encompassing thing. Like, I accounted for off-ball movement, spacing, screening, but not everyone would consider those aspects of playmaking, and that would then fall into this like scope of other parts of offense. But even something like offensive rebounding can't really be like, sure, it boosts scoring, sure, it boosts playmaking, but it also has just an inherent value on offense. And also, I think that the other thing that is really interesting about focusing in on just like offense as a whole is the carryover from defense. So one kind of thing I always like to reference is Russell Westbrook's defensive rebounding was actually a positive quality for the offense, because that meant when he got the ball, you were gone. Transition offense instantly, and you took away the pass to Westbrook that would be made if someone else grabbed the rebound, and it's just quicker transition offense. So there is carryover. Like, a guy who gets a lot of lane steals will have more offensive value than a guy who doesn't. Things like that. So there is a lot of carryover between the relationship of offense and defense that can't really be classified as just scoring or just playmaking. Yeah, man, all that's to say, I couldn't really nail down a list. I feel terrible.
There's some areas of my list where I feel terrible, and if I am adjusting on the fly, don't be surprised. Not in terms of like after I say it, but more so like, all right, we're scrambling before number 8 is showed. But no, I'm cautiously optimistic and excited, and yeah, let's get going.
So aside from the scoring and playmaking, like and just like kind of narrowing down those two qualities, what are the types of things? Like, let's think about this just from a broader perspective. When you're trying to assess the value of an offensive player, where's your head at in terms of like how these things rank in terms of what's the most important? Maybe that's a statistical indicator or what you see on tape. And obviously, like, every player is so different. So like it kind of is case dependent, of course. But just in general, when you're going to watch an offensive player with the goal of evaluating them, what are you looking for?
How are they able to create advantages for either themselves or their teammates? What are their decision-making skills like? Okay, cool, great job. I think those two things really go hand in hand. Like, great job, you created the advantage, you got the defense to collapse, and ultimately have a numbers advantage on the back end. But are you able to kind of get 2 feet in the paint, for example, and play off of that and make the right decision out of that? Because outside of that, that's basically like having a quarterback that can make the right read every time, but just has a duck of an arm and is going to underthrow every ball by 15 yards and it's picked off anyway. Like, okay, cool. Like, the process, like, we know you can see it, but, are you able to actually, make the play when after you have already done your job? I think, variety of shots. We're specifically talking about your scoring, right? We've talked about the versatility of your shot diet or the different passes you can make. And then can you affect the overall impact of your offense in other ways? Like, are you a good screener? Are you a good offensive rebound when you crash, or et cetera? So I think there's a lot of other like small micro under the radar things that you necessarily might not be able to track. But I think if you like pop on a game and, okay, cool, let's pop on a Duke game or whatever. Okay, cool. Like, Cooper Flag maybe does have the greatest handle in the world, but man, he does A, B, C, D, E, F, G really good, or at an NBA level. And okay, cool, we can project that. So I think actually Coop's a really good example of that when like specifically evaluating offensive talent. It's all right. How many boxes do you check? And with some of the boxes maybe you don't check. Is that projectable in terms of, can we fix this? Can we work with it or whatever? And yeah, I'm excited.
Dude, I'm so glad you kind of like focused on the small skills at the end there because that brings me into a really good, like a really big point that I had to think about a lot on my list. I don't know if you ran into this issue, but I think it's pretty important to note. In my opinion, there are 7 players. I have a top 7. There are 7 players who I trust without question can be the number one creator on a championship offense. Like I don't question it, right? Then
You
after
have
that,
7?
I have 7 that I don't question at all. Can be the number one, and that doesn't mean necessarily number one scorer or number one playmaker. It just means like offensive focal point, like the engine of my offense. Do you not have 7?
I
How
have
many do
8.
you have? You have 8? Well, we're this will be a fun discussion then. But I've got 7 of those guys. And so let's say it's 8, right? Let's say it's 8 of those guys. After
I
that,
mean, the number doesn't matter. I'm just trying to figure out which one of these 8
well,
do you
that's
not
what
have.
we're clearly gonna figure it out. But here's my
Stay
question.
tuned,
for
I
you.
guess.
Here's my question for you, right? Would you agree with me that there are still other players that like are close to that threshold? Like if they're in the right situation, I could see that being the case, but I can't like say it without question, right? And just like kind of just in an average scenario, I'm thinking like obviously if you take one of these players that I have like 15th and give them the perfect center, the perfect wings, like the perfect situation, yes, they could be the number one. But like in terms of just like the average championship situation, can you easily build a championship offense around their skill set? I think there's 7 of them. Let's assume there's 8 for the sake of this exercise. After that, am I wrong for thinking like it becomes slightly more valuable to then be a better number 2? Like I don't want to get into the specifics of the players, but if we have 2 guys who I'm like, I don't know if either of you at this point could be a number 1, right? Which one of you would then be better suited off of one of this top 7? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because like I do think that at the end of the day, what we're both trying to capture is which offensive players are going to yield the most championship value. Like which offensive players give me the best chance to win a championship. So if there's no chance of you winning a championship as a number 1, why would I even account for that? Like there's guys that can drag really bad offensive supporting casts to like a top 5 offense, but that formula is never going to win a championship. So what about a guy who can't drag a roster of bums, but then gets on a roster that's stacked and takes them to that upper echelon? I guess the best example of that would be Kevin Durant in 2017, going to the Warriors and then making like an unbeatable team even better. Well, I shouldn't say unbeatable because they got beat in the 2016 finals, but you know, you get the point. He made a 73-win team better by just having all of the complementary skills. That's to me the most interesting thing, like the theory side of it, where it's like, how do you assess value at a certain point? Because if you're one of the best players in the league, obviously, just run your own offense because you're always going to be the offensive focal point. But when you get to like 8, 9, 10, now we're probably talking about guys who are going to need another one of those guys to win a championship.
I'm ready to get going because I hate 9, 10, 11. It's for me 9, 10, 11. I actually feel decently fine about my top 8.
Okay, so my top 7 I feel good about. Then 8 through 12 is like flip a coin. 8 through 12 is like flip a coin.
I guess 9 through 12 or 9 through 9 through 12.
How many players did you consider in total? Like not just like heavily consider, but just overall, like
I basically have 20 players.
I have 18. So you want to kind of just knock off some of those lower end players that you had? Let's start with your number 20.
Well, I mean, like ranked. Yeah, no.
You don't got to rank it. Just name someone that you didn't really, just like get a shout out.
So some honorable mentions. I'm just going to throw a bunch of names into a hat here.
Gotcha.
Karl Anthony Towns, James Harden, Kane Cunningham. Did I already say Darius Garland?
Nope.
Okay, Darius Garland, Damian Lillard.
Yep, Dame.
Just a few that I did consider, but not heavily consider. I'm going to also throw Trae Young into the bunch. Trae out of that group is easily the one that I probably considered the most in air quotes, simply because of the playmaking value and volume that he presents, but pretty clearly a decent step off of like 13 even for me.
Interesting. So Trae was my 13. Trae was my 13, and he's one of those really interesting guys where you run into the he was kind of the guy in my head when I was saying this is a guy who you give him just like somewhat of a decent semblance of an NBA team, and you're probably going to be a top 10 offense. In some of those years, like 2022, I think is easily Trey's best season. He makes that Atlanta team look like a machine on offense, and he was doing everything. He was literally creating every shot for them.
I'm going to take back the decently word. He is 14 for me, though.
He's 14 for you? Okay. So yeah, I had him 13, but it's the same thing. It's like when you put him next to another ball handler, how much value really is there? Because the shooting is kind of like, I don't think he's a guy. I understand the 3-point percentage is lowered because he takes so many tough shots, but I don't view him as the type of shooter that's like, if we only give you spot up catch and shoot threes, you're going to be a 40% shooter. I don't think he's that type of shooter. The value of his shooting is the fact that I'm going to take this 30-foot pull up off a pick and roll, and I'm going to make it sometimes, so you have to guard it. And then, of course, just
make it every once in a while.
I'll make it like once a game, and you're going to be thinking about it the rest of the game. But obviously the value there is the playmaking, the just ridiculous on-ball playmaking. If you give him a lob threat and shooters, you're going to have a spread pick and roll offense that's really, really tough to stop all 82 games. I do wonder how much of that carries over to the playoffs, though. Like, I don't want to hone in on one series, but going back to that 2022 season, he has this masterful offensive season where he looks just superhuman as a lead creator, gets into the Miami series, and they just bottled up literally everything. And it's easy to point to Atlanta's teammates and be like, well, Trey didn't have a great secondary ball handler. He had to do all the heavy lifting. But there's also just the aspect of he can't create a lot of easy shots for himself. He's prone to physicality in the playoffs. If you put length on him, stay attached over screens, he's not going to create a lot of advantages in isolation. So, yeah, I do think there's a ceiling that comes with a Trey Young-centric offense, and then he's easily the worst suited to play number two off of these other guys. To a lesser extent, I think James Harden, good mention, same thing. He's just kind of regressed at this point as an athlete, not the same type of scoring pressure that he used to have, although he is still a world-class playmaker. I actually didn't consider Cat, but that's a worthy mention, and that's pretty interesting because that's the only big outside of Jokic, of course, that we're even going to talk about. So we're kind of starved for like really supreme big man offensive talent right now. I was thinking about that when making my list. Like, it is very guard centric.
Yeah.
I also considered Garland, Cade towards the end of my list. Kyrie's another guy that I also kind of somewhat considered. I really like the way he's able to play off of guys like Luka and like have that championship level number 2 value.
And LeBron.
LeBron.
Okay.
Dame was my number 15. Booker was my number 14.
So Booker's my number 13.
I think kind of a down year for Booker. I think if this was a normal Booker year, I would also have him 13th or maybe even 12th. Because he's another guy. Just he can be a lead creator for a decent offense, but then also you put him next to a playmaker, and everything he does off the ball just enhances the value of the team. So yeah, that covers 18 through 13 for me. 19 through 13 really. So we can get into the top 12. These are the guys that I really started to heavily consider for a top 10 spot. Who was your number 12? Their second guy off.
All right, so my number 12 was Donovan Mitchell. And I don't feel good about that. I think Donovan Mitchell, and we've talked about this a lot, man, him taking the step back in the regular season that ultimately kind of led to some of their offensive explosion, whether it's Darius Garland having such a fantastic season, Evan Mobley's big offensive breakthrough, some of the stuff that they were able to do, and some of the ceilings they were able to reach as a team, obviously. And the fact that in the playoffs he's still basically able to turn it up and be this downhill wrecking ball, I think is the jump shot in the playoffs, like consistently falling or whatever, that just takes it to another level as an offensive player. I like the off ball versatility, obviously, being able to play next to guys like Darius and Evan who are going to have the ball in their hands as well equally and be able to create as well. I think he's a good player. I think I've actually considered him for every list we've made. I think I considered him for my playmaking list. I considered him backpedal. Lie. I did not have him on my playmaking list. Whoopsies. But no, heavily considered him for my scoring list. I think I just left him off of my scoring list. I'm going to just leave him off here. Donovan Mitchell's awesome. And if he's back in like the top 10 range, I think the biggest thing with Donovan Mitchell is if we're honestly going to what you said, I don't like what does Donovan Mitchell as the number 2 option like really look like as the number 2? Like even though this is a down year in volume, he's still the number 1.
Yeah.
So what does that look like?
I agree with you, actually. I think that's a really good point because he is like, I know he's got the length and the size, but he is somewhat of a smaller guard. So you do kind of like want him to be your point guard of your offense in many ways. Like I know they put him next to Garland, but I do think Mitchell's at his best as an offensive player alone as a point guard. And also, yeah, it's weird because I agree with you. I don't think he's a really good off-ball shooter. He's definitely like a reliable off-ball shooter. I think he's been over 40% on catch and shoot threes for a couple of years now. So definitely a reliable off-ball shooter. Decent cutter. I think this year, I think before this year, I would have generally agreed with you. I do think this year when they put the ball in Mobley's hands more, it unlocked a little bit more motion with the handoffs and the off-ball screens and stuff. I do think Mitchell showed a level of like snappiness off the catch that he hadn't previously shown consistently. And I do think Mitchell as an off-ball player does provide a lot of value as just like in the slot, I'm going to catch the ball. You have to close out to me. And also I have this ridiculous first step and I'm a really good driver that can make plays or score at the rim.
43% on transition threes this season, 39.6% on spot up catch and shoot threes this season. I would say the biggest fall off, like 3-point shooting wise for Donovan Mitchell not even. It's still about the same. He shot 35% back-to-back years on pick and roll threes. Mm-hmm. Shot 32% on isolation threes last year. Shot 35% on isolation threes this year. Like maybe like, I mean, degree of difficulty, like I guess that's fine.
I do think, here's what's interesting. I do probably think the 3 guys, so I actually have Mitchell 8th on my list. That's why I thought it was really interesting when you said you had 8 guys. Because Mitchell, I'm still up in the air on about as a number 1. And I think I know who your 8th guy is going to be. I'm not going to spoil it. I think I know who it's going to be. For me, Mitchell is like right on the fence of, we've seen him yield really good offensive results pretty consistently, but we've also seen the downside of that where it's like sometimes it falls apart. And how much of that can you blame on Mitchell? Because I do think one thing he struggled with at times is finding the perfect balance of playmaking and scoring. We talked about this on the playmakers list. He's a guy who like gets these tunnel vision moments and is like, I got to do everything myself. And then he's just like a wrecking ball as a scorer. You get these 35 point per game playoff series where he's just getting to the rim at will. He's hitting the pull up 3. He's using that intermediate game. I do think though, and this was I'm glad you're like consistent with this because we talked about it with the scorers list. I'm definitely just higher on Mitchell as a playoff scorer than you are. We've kind of established that. And I'm also high on the playmaking potential that there is with his scoring because it's not a lack of ability to make plays. It's just like the actual like willingness to go do it. I think he can make pretty much every pass in the book, specifically like those high velocity skip passes, the live dribble, one-handed kickouts, can cover the entire floor as a passer. He can do pretty much everything you want as a scorer and a passer. The question is, will he ever find that balance? And I think he got there in the 2024 playoffs when he faced Orlando and then faced Boston. But we haven't seen a healthy playoff run of this version of Donovan Mitchell yet from the team. Like Garland getting hurt, Mobley getting hurt, DeAndre Hunter getting hurt, all in that Pacer series, I think made Mitchell revert back to that mindset of I have to do everything. And I think...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So do you think that happens this year? Because he's entering year 9. He's already 28 years old. Like, is that something... I'm like not even being like sarcastic. Like, do you think entering year 9, entering his age 29 season, that is something that can seriously, and you are kind of taking like what you were talking about, like we saw some of it even in the regular season, but specifically like you were saying in the playoffs in 2024. Is that something that can like actually translate this year? Because I think that would make me a little bit higher on Donovan Mitchell, because one of the things we talked about with Luka and with Jokic specifically, and those are maybe unfair, but they find this perfect combination and blend of of passing ability and playmaking and just like and scoring and knowing when throughout the duration of the games that it's time to do which thing. So, like, do you think that's something for Donovan Mitchell that he can still kind of tap into this upcoming season?
My initial answer would be I don't know. There's no way of really knowing. But I will say it's dependent on the Cavs' health, because I don't think he goes to that mode if Garland is healthy and if Mobley's healthy and if Hunter's healthy. Like, I think he just felt like he had to. Because like you said, he took a step back throughout the season, was in more of an off-ball role, only getting like 60 touches a game, I think. And then like it was in those key moments where it was like, we need somebody to take over this game.
Then he would do it. Game a lot in the regular season.
Yeah.
I think it's the game they were down like $1 billion.
Didn't he average like 35 a game against Boston or something like that in the regular season?
He cooked Boston.
Yeah, and it's like, so that's what's so interesting, because I do think Mitchell has some red flags, and it comes with like the decision-making stuff, but I also think he has these overwhelming green flags that just drive so much offensive value in so many different situations. Like, we talked about the reliance on the pull-up three being a problem in like some of those other years, but we've seen 2 playoff runs in a row now where it's like, if the shot's not falling, he's just going to put his head down and drive every single possession. And then you get these games in the Pacers series where he's legitimately getting to the rim for like 11 shot attempts or 12 shot attempts, and then also attempting like 16 free throws. And there's just so much pressure that comes with Mitchell as a downhill attacker, because he's got the footwork, the body angles, the strength to throw defenders off of him. He's got the floater now that he added recently, can get to a little mid-range pull-up. And then it's like, oh, and if the 3 ball's falling, now the ceiling is just this untouchable scorer. That's what's so interesting to me, because Mitchell has, and also the other thing with Mitchell is, yes, he's a smaller guard, but he's got a 6'11" wingspan, so just covers a ton of ground, but also doesn't turn the ball over because the ball's in a string. So like in this most recent playoff run, we both saw how much of an offensive load he had to carry. Like, he was doing everything for the Cavs.
Actually, I quit.
Yeah.
I quit.
We saw how much he had to do for the Cavs. He only averaged 2 turnovers per 75. Like, that's crazy to me. That's so, and then even 2024, same thing, 2.8 turnovers per 75. Yeah, I think Mitchell is like really close to being that number 1, but isn't quite there. And I guess like the off-ball role I kind of want you to envision for him isn't that of like a screen and roll guy. He's not going to be a movement shooter. But imagine just like the way the Mavs set up their offense in the 2024 playoffs with Luka on one wing.
About and that so much.
We do. It's a great point of reference. And Mitchell's on the other wing. And it's like, how much nail help can you really bring if Mitchell's hitting that at a 40% clip, and then is also one of the most explosive slashers on the planet? I think there is serious value there. So I'd say I'm a little bit higher on Mitchell. I've got him 8th, but like I said, 8 through 12 was flipping a coin for me. So I'm not mad at you having him off the list, and I think it's consistent with what we've talked about in the last 2 episodes.
Yeah. So that means who's your 12?
My 12 is, and I think this is maybe going to be your number 8, or maybe Anthony Edwards was my 12.
Oh, okay. Okay, so
I know you're. Where'd you have Ant?
You want me to tell you where I had Ant at?
Yeah, where'd you have Ant?
Okay, I had Ant actually 7.
So I knew you were higher on Anthony. So I'll let you. I want you to take the floor for a sec. Like, why do you have Ant 7?
Which is actually interesting. Like, maybe I'm bugging, but I feel like throughout the process, I feel like you've came out higher on Ant than I have. Or am I tripping?
I don't know. I know as a playmaker, I might have been a little bit
You're
higher.
But
I think as a
scorer,
scorer, because I had Mitchell over Ant as a scorer, and that was the back and forth we had.
Yep.
So yeah, tell me about Ant. Why do you have Ant at 7?
So I have Ant at 7 because, and again, there is. For me, it's hard for me sometimes with Anthony Edwards specifically to have a conversation with him and not at least a little bit project, just a little bit. Yeah. Because, and I've talked about this in the past, with Anthony Edwards, I truly think that each year throughout his NBA career, there's been this thing. And by the way, he is a complete development anomaly. And to the extent where, like, I know you've probably seen some of the stuff on Twitter, like Cade or Ant as a prospect. Like, Cade Cunningham as a draft prospect is like one of the 5 best draft prospects in the past 10 years. Past 10 years since 2015. So Zion, Wemby's is just stupid. Cooper Flag's probably up there somewhere. Cade's in there. Like, not to go on this massive tangent, but you get the point. And it's a complete development anomaly to be this good, and like each year it's all right. Can Ant add that? Done. Can Ant add the pull-up three? Done. Can Ant consistently be able to like get into the teeth of the defense and make the correct decisions? Done. So I think a lot of the drawbacks on Ant personally, or even I think just amongst like the NBA like community or whatever, I think at this point you just kind of have to like be like decently confident that those are going to be corrected in some capacity, which I talked about. I think the next one I would say for Ant, heading into the past couple of years, was the pull-up three to attack drop, and he just starts this year off as having one of the best three-point shooting seasons ever. The playmaking, specifically against tight spaces and against overloaded defenses. And we talk about the Lakers series a lot. We talk about OKC. What was it, Game 3, where I remember you like specifically talking about like, dog, that's one of like, Ant didn't like stuff the stat sheet, but that's one of Ant's best offensive process games in terms of how he's dicing up OKC's defense. Like, I think the next one is now, okay, can you just find an area, free throw line down where, dog, you don't have to bring the ball up the floor. We're going to have Conley or one of these other guards just bring it up, and we're going to give you the ball right here, face up, play from there. Very Shea-esque. Even Brunson-esque a little bit where, hey, look, elbow extended, Brunson isolated, just go. You see the defense, go. You have a consistent game from 18 feet in. So, and I think that's probably my biggest drawback on Ant as a player. But again, like I think that it's hard not to give him some benefit of the doubt and say, I'm decently confident this is going to be corrected. And he's probably the only player I'm trying to be consistent, the only player I'm going to give this benefit of the doubt for. Because then, like everything else, man, the best first step in the entire NBA, where he's just going to blow right by you. And then you add the added leap in playmaking. You added the fact that in the regular season, at the very least, he was one of the best three-point shooting seasons of all time. Yeah. And you get to the playoffs, and I think part of what I was talking about is with kind of having your spot on the floor and letting some of your guys like set you up. I think that's going to help out a lot with him even as a playoff scorer. Like he shot 18% on isolation threes in the playoffs. Was a 29th percentile isolation scorer, was a 52nd percentile, so perfectly like average, adequate pick and roll scorer in the playoffs. I think he's added the off ball game and things like that. Obviously, love the offensive versatility. I think in a perfect world, he can slot right in and play alongside another guy pretty like easily, I think. And there's even more steps I think he can add to his off ball game as well. I'm just high on Ant as a scorer, and I think I'm getting there with the playmaking. I think there's still some other elements he can add as well with Ant. So, yeah, I think Ant's awesome. I have him 7, and he just edges out my number 8 personally just because of the scoring, honestly.
Yeah, and I know who your number 8 is. So let me... I don't want to just like rehash the exact same argument. I feel like this is like, I don't want to just repeat what we did in the scores episode where you make the case for Ant and then I'm like, well, here's the exact reason why I have Mitchell over Ant. Where I want to start is actually on the playmaking side because we didn't really dive into either of these guys as playmakers, and I'll just keep it as like Mitchell versus Ant for now because that's the two players we kind of just talked about, and we're on complete opposite ends of the spectrum here, even though it's still kind of obviously close. It's just a tier thing. I think when you look at the playmaking, Mitchell, to me, is just very clearly capable of making way... I cut out for a sec. Let me start that again. Mitchell, to me, is just very clearly capable of making more versatile, different types of passes. Like, I just think he's a flat-out better, more skilled passer. Can make more passes on the court, more in his bag. Just like, in general... When it comes to the just pure skill of passing the ball, I think Mitchell can do more. I think Edwards' process in looking for those passes is better. I think that OKC series really showcased that, where it's like they started to really zone up his drives, pack the paint, send two bodies, and consistently he hit the exact right pressure point and then made the passes at the right time. It was very basic passes, like just normal kickouts and things like that. But that's because of the way he has to be defended because of his scoring threat. Like you said, the first step, nobody can stay in front of him. Another point in favor of Mitchell, though, is that he's got a much tighter handle. I think he can keep his dribble live longer and get into like tighter pockets, which I think is what really helps him as an intermediate scorer. And that's kind of my main reason for having Mitchell over Ant. You kind of talked about it with Ant's limited game, 18 feet in. I also just think when he's driving downhill, he doesn't really have something he can go to that isn't kind of launching himself vertically at a rim protector. And that really hurts his kind of rim scoring numbers in the playoffs. And then when he gets into these elite paint defenses, we've seen 2 years in a row where his scoring just falls off a cliff. First, it was Dallas, where it was like, we're going to have Gafford or Lively drop back every time, and we're going to give you the pull-up three. And it's like, you can either take the pull-up three or you can try to create against this drop. And we have a big rim protector in the middle. And Ant, his pull-up three left him in that series. And then his scoring just looked really pedestrian because he doesn't have that intermediate scoring game. He doesn't have that floater or that quick mid-range pull-up. Same thing against OKC. The playmaking was awesome, but the three-point shot left him, and he didn't really have a way to score around Chet or Hartenstein in the middle of the paint. And his scoring just kind of fell off a cliff. I don't think that happens to Mitchell in those situations because he's got an elite floater, because he's better at getting to the line. That's another thing with Mitchell. Better at using his body to initiate contact. So really, it's just, the short mid-range game, I think, is the biggest thing. I referenced these numbers back in the scorers episode. In the last 3 playoff runs, Donovan Mitchell has attempted 7 short mid-range shots per 75 possessions and made them at a 52% clip. So we're 7 short mid-range shots at a 52% clip. Anthony Edwards has attempted 4.5 at a 42% clip. So we're talking about 2.5 more shots on 10% better efficiency from that range, with very similar rim scoring numbers, with very similar three-point numbers, while also getting to the line more, and then also being a more versatile passer. So to me, that's just kind of the selling point. Now, I do think there's untapped potential with Ant as an off-ball scorer that hasn't been actualized because he hasn't really played with a dynamic scoring threat as a point guard who can also set up plays. Shout out Rob Dillingham. I hope that kind of turns out well. But I do think Donovan Mitchell's also shown to be a much quicker decision maker off the catch up to this point. So to me, I think Mitchell maybe has a little bit more off-ball value. I think he's a better on-ball scorer in the playoffs for now. But like Ant is just that like extra intermediate scoring punch away from probably being in my top 5 or 6.
So who is your? So wait, I have my 7. Give her 8.
We haven't done 11. We haven't done either of our 11s. Who's your 11?
Sheesh.
And 11, 11 was brutal. I actually had my 9 through 11. I flipped like 6 times before we started recording.
I've like flipped it twice since we've started.
Yeah. So who was the cut, man?
This is so nasty. I'm about to get cooked. Because my 10, I have not had on my top 10 on either list.
So I think I know who your 10 is. So who's your 11?
My 11 is KD.
Okay, so KD was my original 11, and I bumped him to 10.
Okay.
So talk to me. Why was KD your cut?
So wait, I think our 11 through 9 are the same. So do you want to like go through 11 through 9 and then like talk about our process there?
We can, yeah. So my 11 was LeBron.
Okay.
My 10 was KD, and my 9 was Tatum.
Okay. My 11 was KD, my 10 was Bron, my 9 is Tatum.
Okay, so we both have Tatum at 9. Let's do the KD versus LeBron thing for now.
Okay.
How did you separate? I could not separate the two. I did not know what to do.
No. I think one of the, and this is so nitpicky, one of the separators I actually did kind of use was, okay, I mentioned that I did not have Bron on my top 10 on either list. He was not my top 10 on my scorers list or my top 10 in my playmaking list. But I did consider Bron for both of them. Bron was just outside the list on the scorers. He was super just outside the list on the playmakers. He's like 11 for me on my playmakers list. So it was between him and Ja for that 10th spot. So I do value I just think, I don't know if overwhelming is the correct word, but just the like flat out advantage that he has over Kevin Durant as being a little bit more of a balanced offensive player in terms of being able to balance and marry the playmaking with the scoring a little bit more more consistently than Kevin Durant can. I think Kevin Durant, obviously, all-world scorer. That we want to talk about, like, just give him the ball at a specific spot and just go to work, have at it. I do think I have value, and I don't want to like take away from what Kevin Durant can do as an offensive player. But maybe this is maybe one of the like smaller reasons why I view Denver as better than Houston. I do view Houston as specifically in the Western Conference hierarchy. I think actually Houston's kind of in a league of themselves right now. If you want to kind of have that conversation, I think it's more so OKC, Denver in tier 1, and then it's Houston and like I guess Minnesota. #respect ? Because I think while adding KD is awesome, I do think KD needs more playmaking from his surrounding cast than like a LeBron does. And I think LeBron, purely as an offensive player, I think almost fits into almost any situation better than Kevin Durant does, to be honest. Because of the at this stage of his career, the elite catch and shoot threat, the fact that he is still away from the ball. They have tapped in so much recently in the later stages of his career as a stampede cutter and getting him active away from the ball. We talk a lot about those two-side actions where it's Luka in the slot getting a ball screen and it's LeBron in the opposite slot and LeBron's cutting off of Luka essentially. You still have the post work you get to LeBron, the nail isolation stuff. We've already talked about the decrease in spread pick and roll, but you're still going to get that stuff. You're still going to get the high-level decision-making, maybe not high-level volume playmaking, but still like elite-level decision-making. Can still push the break when he wants to. And maybe I like discredited Kevin Durant a little bit in terms of like fit like a glove in every situation. But I do want to emphasize, though, that due to the fact that Bron can do both things so well and has kind of evolved his game and has became legit. He's coming off his best mid-range shooting season of his entire career as well, basically, as well. The catch-shoot threat, that is the very, very slim margin. I like talked a lot about Bron in a positive way where it feels like I'm negative on KD. Kevin Durant's awesome. Like I said, it felt nasty as ever to leave KD off the list, but I do have Bron 10, and this will be the first time that I have Bron in my top 10.
So I agree with basically everything you said. I think a lot of people overlook how much, like, if you look at Kevin Durant's box score versus Kevin Durant's box score in Brooklyn, like 2021, you would be like, no, this is basically the same player. But I do think he's regressed a lot as a playmaker. And it's a lot of it is just like the types of actions he's using to get to his scoring. So in 2021, heavy dose of high pick and roll, heavy dose of off-screen stuff, and it's like, I'm going to make this quick little drop pass, we're going to create a 4-on-3, or I'm going to draw a nail help from the perimeter and kick it to the shooter on the wing, who can then play off the catch, and there's just a domino effect. Nowadays, Kevin Durant's offense is a lot more, all right, let's clear out for me to play from the elbow. If the offense sends a double, I'll kick it out, but I can literally make the basic kick-out pass. Like, ideally, the best pass you can make out of that mid-post spot, and we see it from Jokic, is once the defense starts to shift, I can skip it to the weak side corner. KD has never really had that pass. That's just, it's not that he's physically incapable of making it. He'll make it sometimes, but that's when he starts to get really turnover prone, is when they start disguising those coverages and force him to make that weak side skip pass. So just in general, there's a lot less creation for the team around him. But this is where, like, the way I was able to split hairs, actually, I wasn't able to split hairs. They have the exact same evaluation in my book. It's just like I had to put one at 10 and I had to put one at 11. The separator for me was very specifically like, okay, I don't know if either of these guys have enough juice at this point in their careers to be my number one guy. I think LeBron is obviously, like, we both had him really close to a top 10 scorer and really close to a top 10 playmaker. But we both agreed that, like, there just isn't a super consistent advantage creation with him at this point. He doesn't always get to the rim. He doesn't always beat defenders. Not going to be a volume pick and roll ball handler or anything. He's not the type of guy that anymore that it's like, I'm going to put the ball in LeBron's hands and we're going to have this juggernaut of a playoff offense regardless of who's around him. That just isn't the case. That's why the Lakers go out and get Luka, in addition to, of course, building for the future. And I think once you put a lead ball handler on the court, KD is just simply the most valuable weapon you can have. We're talking about a guy who last season shot 46% on catch and shoot threes and attempted over 300 of them. 300 catch and shoot threes at a 46% clip. You can't contest him because he's basically 7 foot with a high release point. So it's like, if you even think about helping on the ball from Kevin Durant, you're basically giving up 1.4 points per possession. And that just has an unfathomable amount of value when you're trying to create the best playoff offense. The other thing with KD is, like, not only is he limited to that catch and shoot three, he can then beat a closeout and get to a 55% mid-range pull-up. He's going to generate a bunch of free throws. He can play off of screens. Just really unlocks a lot of value away from the ball that I think, like, if you put him next to a guy like Luka or a guy like Jokic, there's just so much value in the fact that he's basically, like, we talked about it with Kyrie. There's a lot of discussion about Kyrie being able to play off LeBron, Kyrie being able to play off of Luka. Kevin Durant, to me, feels like a juggernaut version of that, even at this stage in his career. The other thing with KD, though, and why I would give him the slightest of edges over LeBron, is simply, at this point, and even at this point in their careers, how many players in the NBA would you prefer over Kevin Durant when there's, like, tie game, 2 minutes left, and we have to have a go-to half-court action every time down the court? It's like a Jokic post-up, a Shea isolation, a Brunson isolation, and then a KD mid-post touch, I feel like. There aren't many actions that are better. Like, even, I think Kevin Durant as an isolation scorer last season was 1.16 points per possession. Like, it doesn't get more efficient than a Kevin Durant isolation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, to me, the selling point. It's like, if we're in the playoffs, yes, I'm going to need another playmaker to run the offense. I'm going to need someone to get KD in these, like, advantageous off-ball spots. But in that role, he can give me 30 on 65% true shooting like it's nothing. And then it's like, then for those little 2-minute stretches where we absolutely need to find some offense, get the ball to this guy in the mid-post, and there's basically nothing better. Sean just respawned in a whole different room. Is bro in prison? What just happened?
I have no clue what just happened.
Wrong mic, wrong camera? Dude, too much Kevin Durant praise for this guy, man. He couldn't handle it.
I know my camera, my entire setup was just like, yeah, so how do we figure out a way to get Tyler to quit yapping about Kevin Durant?
I also don't want to take away from LeBron, though, like, when I talk about this ability to play off of other ball handlers, because I do think LeBron's come a long way. You talked about the catch-and-shoot game and the stampeding. He's also a really advanced screen and roll big who's just a wrecking ball going downhill and can make every read out of the short roll. I think LeBron does deserve a lot of credit for what he does as a number 2. I just think if I'm splitting hairs, and I don't really want either of these guys consistently handling the ball for my championship-level offense, I do think KD is kind of just like the ultimate plug-and-play guy that if I have a lead ball handler, he's going to give me just such good value because of his efficiency.
So, moving on really quickly to number 9. It's funny that I brought up Cooper Flagg earlier because he was one of the few players I actually did like a draft eval for this year due to time and some other things going on. Not like had some interviews or whatever for something. I don't know what that was. No. But, like, funny enough, my pro comp for Cooper Flagg was Jayson Tatum. Because I think Tatum is a flawed player, but in those flaws, I think people in some context kind of lose sight of how good he is still, and in some ways can become underrated. Like, Tatum is kind of the example of, okay, is he this elite scorer? No, he's not. He definitely has some flaws, similar like I was talking about Cooper Flagg. Like, Cooper Flagg does not have this great handle. It's probably the biggest flaw coming out for Cooper Flagg coming out of Duke. But, like, going back to Tatum, elite offensive rebounder, probably one of the 2 best offensive rebounding wings, if not the best offensive rebounding wing in the entire league. The engine for their half-court offense, regardless of Jaylen Brown being there, whatever other pieces they have at that given moment, because of his ability to make almost every pass that their offense requires, and the ability to just be a good decision maker and kind of pick apart the defense from a standstill. And make no mistake about it, he's not this like quick, decisive decision maker. Like, I think you saw. Have you seen that this like synergy post? And like, Tatum's going to hold the ball, but he's going to hold the ball and still make the correct decision. It's just not as advanced at high speed of it, like a Haliburton, for example. But he's still going to be able to break the defense down, get to his spot, and then make the right pass more times than not to the plethora of shooters that they have or had at Boston when Tatum was healthy. I think the severe playoff volatility as a scorer due to the fact that some of it's shot selection, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, because I almost said reliance. I'm actually going to say reliance on his pull-up three in a playoff setting does kind of nuke his consistency as a playoff scorer, which is frustrating because it's not out of, like, ability or athletic. Trey, like you were talking about Trey, for example, right? How Trey can really struggle against the physicality and the aggressive playoff defenses. It's not like Tatum can't do it because you'll have these pocket games. Honestly, the Orlando series I thought was a scoring masterpiece from Tatum.
Yeah.
And then you get game one down the stretch, game two down the stretch against New York, where Tatum will hunt for the Jalen Brunson switch, successfully get the Jalen Brunson switch, and then just jack up 20-foot sidestep contested twos with 10 seconds on the shot clock. So I think because of his shot selection, because of the fact, like, I don't think his handle's the tightest. I think it's, like, perfectly fine. Compared to some other jumbo creators, like, it could be better. But man, he is really good at almost everything offensively. The engine of their offense, good enough score, especially in a regular season, but there is a volatile part of his playoff scoring. And then kind of last note to end on Tatum, even the catch and shoot factor can kind of be somewhat inconsistent. Like if I recall correctly, 2024 in the playoffs, it was a really inconsistent. You just could not hit the three ball at all. Even this year, 25% catch and shoot 3-point shooter in the playoffs in 8 games played. To go back to the title year for Boston, so you're looking at a 19 game sample. Tatum shot 29% on catch and shoot threes. Shot on uncontested catch and shoot threes. Shot 35%. He was almost a better pull up 3-point shooter that run from three than he was on catch and shoot opportunities. So I do think the fact that Tatum's shot just over the past couple of years from three specifically, he relies on it so much that it has kind of escaped him from three specifically. And he's going to shoot so many of them that you're going to lead to some inefficient series. Outside of that, though, not to be too negative on Tatum, he's like perfectly in the top 10. I don't think there's a way you can have him not in the top 10. I think Tatum's like firmly in the top 10 because he does do everything like really, really well. But like I don't think ever going to crack the top 5.
What's so funny to me is like you were so positive about LeBron at 10 and then so negative about Tatum at 9. It's just like so like
I thought I was decently positive about Tatum.
You were until you weren't. and it's like it's not even like a fault. It's honestly because you had to like talk yourself up to LeBron after not having him on the scorers and playmakers list. Like this is definitely a better listen for anyone who already listened to scorers and playmakers and understands where our heads at regarding these players.
Yeah.
Because like I do feel myself like rehashing the same things over and over again. So again, I recommend everyone go listen to the scorers and playmakers because there probably is some stuff we're missing just because we don't want to reiterate ourselves 3 times. The Tatum point, I would say the way you can get him to 11 would be by making the argument. So I have KD 10, LeBron 11.
Okay.
I think you can slide Tatum below those guys just off of the merit that I don't think Tatum has a superpower that either of those guys have. I think KD's superpower is take your pick of mid-post isolations
Jack of all
or
trades, master of none, basically for Tatum.
Shoot, yeah, exactly. Like or shooting. Like Kevin Durant's just like a goat tier shooter at this point.
That's fair.
And then with LeBron, it's the passing. I think the passing, like he can make every single pass.
Even at this point.
Yeah, or just I think Tatum doesn't have that one thing you can look at and be like, hey, this is what Tatum is a master of. But like you said, he does literally everything. He can handle the ball out of pick and roll or in isolation, gets to the rim a lot, and is a super efficient finisher, gets to the line. I do think he lacks intermediate scoring when playing from the perimeter. Like he doesn't really have a floater or a mid-range pull-up. But if you get him the ball in the mid-post, he actually has a pretty surgical mid-range game with those little bump step backs and just face-up middies. He does have that. Can play off the ball as a screener or as a spot-up guy. Tatum's a really interesting case study because I said my top 7 is like guys who I think can be the number 1 offensive player on a championship team. Tatum was that a year ago, but that does feel like a weird outlier situation where it's like at all times he's playing in 5 out with 4 other guys who can either shoot the 3 to 40% clip or make really good decisions off the catch. Tons of ball handling, tons of shooting.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Like, what does Tatum look like on the 2025 Suns instead of KD? Who knows, right? Like, who knows? There's no, like, very little lob threat. But then maybe he looks better because Tatum, I do think Tatum is ridiculously underrated as a playmaker. He's a super good skip passer, super good decision maker, always quick to get off the ball out of one-on-one situations. I do think Tatum, like, everything I talked about with Mitchell, like the tunnel vision, the sometimes going into score-only mode, Tatum is the antithesis of that, where it's like he always feels like he has that balance. It's just that he's not a super elite scorer, and he's also not a super elite playmaker. So it's like there is a ceiling with that on a game-to-game basis. Now, the ceiling when he gets the three-point shot going is like maybe the highest of any player in the league. Like, you get the game he gets injured, that Knicks game, was that game 4? He's just like having just an all-time performance.
Oh, no, it might be game 4. I think
it was game 4. He has like this all-time performance before he gets hurt. You get game 7 against Philly. You get game 6 against Milwaukee. He has these moments where like the ceiling is that of a top 3 or 4 offensive player. But like you said, the volatility and the reliance on the pull-up 3, even more so this year than other years because he hitched up the volume to like 9 a game. I do think it's like if he goes cold for a 2-game stretch, like in games 1 and 2 against New York, now the offense is a little bit more one-dimensional than what you get from Donovan Mitchell, which is why I had Mitchell at 8 and Tatum at 9. Same tier. I just kind of like trust Mitchell a little bit more as my on-ball scorer than Tatum. I think he can just get to pressure points a little bit easier because of his agility, because of his handle, because of his willingness to always attack the rim. But yeah, I think Tatum's high end here would be 8 probably. And then low end, like I said, 11 or 12.
So really quickly, 2 points here. To your point about the short mid-range area, like the floater, or just the pull-up midi from a standstill. Jayson Tatum this year in the playoffs, per 100 possessions, got a little bit over 5 short mid-range attempts per 100, shot 18. If you want to round up, I guess. Shot 19% on those short mid-range attempts. If you go back to last year, he shot 4.4 in the playoffs, 4.4 short mid-range attempts per 100, and shot 27% on those.
So that's a lot worse than I thought. That's like 3 tiers below what I talked about with Ant.
Yeah.
That's bad. That's really bad.
That's bad.
That's really bad. That's, not to cut you off, but I think that's why he gets into those pull-up 3 modes, because it's like when you sit a rim protector on the block in his driving lane, he doesn't really have that, I'm going to beat my defender, and then I have another counter. It's like, what now? I have to finish over this rim protector.
Yeah. All my second point is actually unrelated to Tatum, so that's why I'm glad you went. I'm going to do a little bit of podcast magic here, Tyler.
Okay.
I'm going to bump down Anthony Edwards to number 8.
Oh.
I'm gonna bump down Ant to 8. So I'm bumping 8 down from 7 to 8. So my 10 through 8 is now, but my 12 through 8 has been revealed. It's 12 Donovan Mitchell, 11 Kevin Durant, 10 LeBron James, 9 Jayson Tatum, 8 Anthony Edwards.
Got you. So what's funny is before the episode, you said you're going to be actively changing things. And then you said, but obviously not after I already.
I did say that, didn't I?
You said that bar for bar. That's hilarious. So my 12 was Ant. My 11 was LeBron James, and I'll pull it up real quick. Share my screen because we do these little graphics just to kind of remind everyone where we're at. So we've got, for your 10, you had LeBron, Tatum, and Ant, 10 through 8. I had KD, Tatum, and Mitchell. We've had the same 8 through 12 at this point now because you moved Ant down, but completely different orders. And I think it's very consistent with what we talked about in the scorers and playmakers list. Like, you came out higher on Ant, I came out higher on Mitchell. KD and LeBron, we both were just like, it is what it is. And then we landed on the same spot on Tatum.
Yeah.
So I think so far this has been pretty consistent with the first 2 videos of this series. now's where things get really interesting because I think these are the 7 players who you can legitimately build a championship offense around their skill set, and they all have completely different skill sets.
Yeah, so number 7 for me is Rudy Gobert. Obviously, 27, 24 in a closeout Game 5.
So you're just taking my mantle now of just like doing the Rudy Gobert gimmick.
I can't allow you to do it, so I get frustrated. So I'm just gonna take it away from you. No, all seriousness, I'm glad you made that point. I think these are 7 offensive engines that, if you do it right, these are guys that can be the best offensive player to lift your team up and be the best offensive player on a championship team. I do want to briefly explain my decision to drop Ant down to 8. It is pretty simple, actually. It's what I was kind of saying in the middle of my explanation for Ant being so high, kind of being, hey, if there's one guy I'm going to give benefit of the doubt to, it's going to be Ant because I think he's shown that development curve, which I'm not saying that's not true, but I'm going to walk myself back a little bit like, no, I think right after this season, if you told me this guy is ahead of my number 7 or ahead of maybe some of these other guys, hey, I wouldn't be surprised. But I'm going to walk it back a little bit and not give him so much benefit of the doubt and just keep him at 8 and be fine. I would still argue that I think Ant is arguably, I don't know, Ant's tough. I think you can build a championship offense around Ant. I do think that.
That's fair. Okay, so all right, yeah. My number 7, and this feels low. I feel like anyone who I could have had at 7 would feel low.
Yep.
My 7, and I think it's gonna be different from your 7. My 7 is Giannis.
Okay. What do I have him at?
And this is a tough spot because I do think, going back to our scorers, we both had Giannis 3rd, and both said he has a very strong argument for 1st. And it's just the fact that he has maybe the most valuable superpower in basketball, and that's the fact that nobody can stop him from getting to the rim, where he then makes like 79% of his shots. And it's like, oh, what do you do with that? Nothing. There's nothing you can do with that. His floor is so high as an offensive player. Added the mid-range game this year, like at a very consistent level. Shot, I want to say 43% on like 8 or 9 mid-range shots per 75. My one gripe with that is like he made it a little bit too much of a go-to instead of a counter. Like there were possessions where he'd come down actively looking for the mid-range instead of like, oh, I can't get to the rim, now I'm gonna fall back on the mid-range.
As a counter.
But that kind of went away in the playoffs. Like against Indiana, it was very much, I'm going to get to the rim, there's nothing you can do, or I'm gonna get to the line. And kind of the one separator for Jokic and Shea at 1 and 2 on my scorers list and Giannis at 3, and you kind of agreed with this too, was the fact that he's a 60% free throw shooter. I think it was 65% this year, or something like that. There's some years in the low 60s, maybe even high 50s. I might be blanking. But it's just the fact that like you get into these late game playoff situations, and his inability to make 2 free throws can be a liability at times. Like I think the best example of that, and obviously this isn't fair to use an injured year, but the 2023 Heat series. Actively trying to not touch the ball down the stretch of that game because he knew the Heat were going to foul him, and Middleton had to like try and close. I do think that's a big limiting factor here, but actually my argument for Giannis, because like I said, I still have him as the 3rd best scorer. My argument for Giannis being 7 instead of like 4 is some of the playmaking limitations. I think Giannis is a ridiculously good kick-out passer and skip passer. When it comes to spraying out the ball to shooters in the corner or on the wings, because of his rim pressure and the defensive attention he forces, and then the ability to make all of those passes, he's going to create a lot of open threes. That's just what it is. But I do think his playmaking game is somewhat limited to that. Like, I think he's very turnover prone. You see it when he gets the ball in his hands a lot and he plays that like point forward role. He gets like 4 or 5 turnovers pretty consistently, which I think is sometimes just wild passes, but also the fact that he's a 7-footer trying to handle the ball from the perimeter. Playoff defenses are going to get up into that and really just start closing off those lanes. But the big thing with me for him as a playmaker is that the playmaking itself is super one-dimensional. And what I mean by that is like, okay, yes, you're going to load up in the paint, and I'm going to drive and I'm going to kick. But then what else is there in terms of like how many ways can I really create offense for the guys around me? And I don't think Milwaukee's done him justice with the teams they've put around him. Like the 2025 playoffs with Dame hurt. It's basically just Giannis and a bunch of guys who can stand there and shoot. That's pretty much the offense. But we saw in that Indiana series where it was like, hey, if we zone up the middle of the floor, sit everyone at the nail, don't send help from the corners, Giannis is going to get his like 35 efficiently, but he's not really going to create for the other guys because the corner three isn't there. And then these wing guys aren't threats to drive. So we can just hard close on them. And I think that just kind of made Giannis a little bit one-dimensional. Like, yes, you look at the numbers, and the numbers are off the charts. But Milwaukee's offense suffered in that series, and I think it was some of that was the fact that Giannis kind of doesn't have other layers to his offensive creation. You're not going to get spread pick and roll out of him. You're not going to get a ton of efficient post touches unless it's a mismatch. You're not going to get a lot of half-court isolation. It's very much just like, let's set this down screen, let's set this flat ball screen, I should say. Let's get downhill. Let's collapse the paint and let's spray it to the corners. So once you kind of zone in on that, I do think if we saw the Bucks get deep into a playoff run, it would be a little bit more predictable than anything you see from my top six.
So I'm going to save my my Giannis conversation. I do have Giannis a little bit higher.
Gotcha.
If you guys were able to see my reactions, I don't know how they're gonna put out the podcast or whatever, but I am like going through it. Like,
yeah,
I am going through it. As funny as off air, I guess you want to call it that. Like, oh no, I feel really, really good about my top 7.
I remember that. Yep. And I said I feel awful. Like, I feel awful having Giannis at 7, but then like any of the guys I move him over, I feel worse about them at 7.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of where I'm at. Also, I guess like somewhat of a separator for Giannis is that I do still think he's a little bit of an awkward fit as a big with other ball handlers. Like, I don't think the pick and roll game, I think he's obviously a great pick and roll big because of the threat to finish and just the lob ability and the short roll playmaking, all that good stuff. But not a big screener, not always the best process on rolls. So I do think like you kind of have to have a specific type of ball handler next to him to get the most value out of his pick and roll game. We talked about that with the Dame conversation. Yeah, it is weird. And also, the last point on Giannis that I want to make, I do think he handicaps lineup construction more than any of my top 6. Meaning you kind of have to have all these shooters, or there's not much, like now we're packing the paint every single touch.
So I'm actually going to just have my Giannis conversation now.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
So I have Giannis 5.
Okay. I would wait before you do it. I want to say Giannis to me could be as high as 4, but I had him at 7. So keep going.
So I have Giannis 5. And honestly, the argument for it's just so easy, man. Just automatic paint touch. Just get right train and transition. Automatic paint touch. Okay enough playmaker. He's very clearly the weakest playmaker out of these guys here. In terms of variety of passes and different things you could do with him as a playmaker. Specifically in terms of involving his teammates. Well, no, because then if you're even going by your definition and the screening ability, then yeah, that actually probably makes the argument even more so that he's the weakest playmaker here. Obviously provides some things for you as an offensive rebounder and stuff like that, but just so very clearly one of the most dominant forces in basketball where there is just nothing you can honestly do at this point with Giannis from a standstill because he's just going to blow by you and at the very least cause the defense to collapse. And yes, he does kind of pigeonhole your roster construction. You have to build a very specific roster for Giannis and specific lineups for Giannis. I do want to push back a little bit. Not necessarily on that being accurate, but more so on like, okay, like, do it then. Like, and that's where like to your point about like Milwaukee, like kind of failing Giannis to a sense of giving him the necessary guys, because the necessary guys that are actually good NBA players, because the lineups that you and like, for example, and some of Twitter people are like putting together and saying, yeah, this is the lineup that's going to get the Bucks to 50 wins this season. Dude, that lineup is Miles Turner, like Ryan Rollins, Torian Prince, AJ Green in the big 2-5. What are we doing here? Like, those are easily some of the weakest starting caliber players out of any of these other guys like rosters when they're healthy. So I do want to like kind of push back a little bit. Again, not necessarily saying in the sense that it's right, but like, okay, just know that. And now just in a sense, I think in a sense, it should, in theory, make some of your roster construction, and maybe I'm just being optimistic here, thinking about like roster building, it at least makes it a little bit more targeted, and in a sense can be a little bit easier to build around Giannis. Now, he's difficult in terms of identifying like second and third stars. Absolutely. That is a very difficult process, I think, when dealing with Giannis. I think the perfect example is the Damian Lillard situation, where you add in this spread pick and roll centric guard that relies on pull-up threes and his downhill creation ability. Well, guess what? Giannis is not a good screener. He's not a good decision maker out of those. So if you put two on the ball with Dame and you're asking Giannis to consistently make short roll reads, to your credit, you might run into some problems there. But I mean, like, okay, cool. Then we are going to narrow. Do you have a more narrowed target? I think Tyrese Haliburton's kind of similar to him in the sense. I think Hallie's range is a lot wider for sure. But like current iteration of Hallie, not like Hallie's a number 2 somewhere else, but Indiana's vision, pretty easy, honestly. Like, let's go get dudes that can hit threes, make quick decisions, play off the catch, and we'll figure the rest out from basically every position. I think it just makes the roster construction a lot more narrowed in, a lot more focused, instead of trying to find these like different pieces and try to put together put a square into a round hole or whatever. Whatever the saying is, a square peg into a round hole.
Yep.
No, we know what players we want to target. Okay, now Milwaukee just has failed him at doing that for basically since the 2022 season, the year after the finals run, because I think that roster is actually still pretty good. They just ran into every injury, it felt like, some bad luck in that Boston run. So Giannis is in some of the ways that you talked about, flawed, the playmaking, the screening, stuff like that. Has this superpower, though, as a player. And I think that superpower is so elite and so dominant that I'm going to look past some of the shortcomings and give him some benefit of the doubt with the roster and what you highlight as a weakness, which is a weakness, but like at the same time, like I said, just Milwaukee needs to do a better job of actually accomplishing it.
Yeah, it is interesting. And also my last point on Giannis would be actually I have a kind of a down point and then also a positive point. I will say I agree with you that the roster construction has kind of failed him, but I also wonder, like, because you need so many reliable spot up shooters, how many of those guys actually exist where it's like, we're going to put out this lineup of shooters, but then they also can do a lot more than that. Like, that's what makes it tough for me. Because it's like,
there's whole championship teams over the past few years built off of that.
Like, I mean, the Celtics, I'm not saying, like, yeah, the Celtics are not a normal
Celtics,
team.
Like, Indiana this year, they didn't win it, but, like, that roster, in terms of guys that can, yes, hit shots and play off the catch, but also add other things.
But, like, yeah, but I'm saying, if you put Giannis in place of Haliburton, like, does that offense not just function way differently? Is it not just a whole different approach?
Yeah, it's a whole
because
different.
Giannis isn't going to be he's not going to be the kick ahead guy. He's going to grab and go, and that instantly just changes the dynamic of the offense.
Okay, so instead of it being like, hey, we're just going to kick ahead and play, like, there's going to be a philosophical shift for sure.
Yeah.
But like, you're telling me that Pacer offense, if you swap Giannis or Haliburton, I'm not trying to downgrade Hallie whatsoever.
Right.
Hallie's a superstar. That team's still really freaking good.
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course, they're still a championship level offense. That's why, like I said, my top 7, I think you can build a championship level offense around.
Yeah.
I just think, the kick aheads, that kind of is what made the Pacers transition offense. That's what made the Pacers was the kick aheads. If Giannis is grabbing and going, that just gives the defense an extra 2 or 3 seconds to get set. And it's like, you're still going to have a crazy efficient transition offense because of the player that Giannis is downhill. But it's a little bit different. And then also in the half court, Haliburton ball screens are automatic advantages. Giannis to me doesn't have a go-to action in the half court. Like, if he doesn't have that head of steam, what is his go-to action in the half court? Is it a post-up?
So like
Because then what is Siakam's role? It's not.
or it's like
he's
a nail
guy.
isolation. It's the same thing. Like, yeah, okay.
I do think
that's fair.
I just think he's a clunkier fit than a lot of other players.
Yeah, no,
And
that's fair.
Kind of why I had him at 7. But yeah, my 6 was Haliburton. So we could just have I'm assuming Haliburton was your 7.
No.
Whoa. Okay, so let's have the Haliburton conversation, and then we'll back up to your 7.
So Haliburton's your 6.
Yes.
Haliburton's your
What
6.
is he for you? Was he your 6 as well? You said Haliburton was your 6?
Hold
He's
on,
your
wait.
4?
Hold on.
What?
Just I'm
You're higher on Haliburton than me?
I'm like reconciling with some things. Hold on.
When I had Haliburton at 6, I thought you were gonna like look at me like I'm crazy.
Hold on, guys.
I know someone listening is looking at me like I'm crazy right now for having Haliburton at 6. And I will make the case in a second once Sean's done going through it. We might have to give Sean a lobotomy after this episode.
All right. Yeah. Haliburton's my 6.
You're 6?
Okay.
All right. Okay, you talk to me about Haliburton first.
I mean, he's. This is the part where it gets like really regurgitating because I'm basically just gonna say every single thing I said about Haliburton in the playmaking episode. I was so close to having a 4. The only reason why I actually don't have Haliburton at 4, to be completely honest with you, is really just because of the fact that out of every guy here, like in the top 7, he's the guy that I'm lower just based off where I had them at on our scorers list. He's the guy that I'm easily just lower on as a scorer compared to all these other guys. And that is, like, truth be told, just the biggest reason why he's not 4. Because his playmaking value alone is like worthy enough. It's so ridiculous, and why I think he's worthy, more than worthy of being number 4 for a guy that has as many touches as Tyrese Haliburton does, and he's gonna get a lot of offensive touches. Don't get that twisted. And I bring up that synergy. I brought up that synergy tweet from earlier where I think it was average time that you're like holding the ball or whatever. Maybe I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what they were trying to get at. It was how long are you holding the ball once you get it. It's like Tatum at the far end of the spectrum, and it's like 5 seconds almost, which is nuts. And it's Haliburton at like 0.7 seconds or something just stupid. And we've talked about this a billion times in 58 or whatever episodes at this point. Haliburton's superpower is his processing. He is arguably the best processor in the league currently, like, I guess not named LeBron. I would even argue to a certain extent his processor's better than like Luka's or Jokic's, because I put out a tweet it would have been maybe a little bit less than a week ago now. If we're just talking about the past decade or so, it's like Bron, Chris Paul, Hallie, and then Draymond. In just terms of processing speed and just being a freaking computer at being able to, whether it's Haliburton with the quick swings or the head-to-heads or his pick and roll reads, Chris Paul on both ends of the floor. And also, like, we're talking about processing. Haliburton's actually a pretty smart defensive player as well. He has his limitations, specifically in one-on-one scenarios. But, again, the processing rolls over to that end of the floor as well. Same with Bron, same with Draymond.
You can't even, like, scram switch against Haliburton because he's going to make the skip pass before you do it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I will say, though, like, not to go off track, Draymond, like, of those players you named, I think Draymond might be the quickest processor I've ever seen. Like, I just wanted to take a moment to really highlight that.
Some of the things he does, like, defensively, specifically from a processing standpoint, is just, like, nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, since you're on that point really quickly, would you agree with that list, or would you add anybody to it?
I would throw Jokic in there, too.
Okay.
But, yeah, those are the names. Yeah, 100%.
And that's easily a superpower. Then you just add all the other just positive things he does, man. Including those other guys, the least turnover prone out of any of the guys we mentioned. We talked about it in the last podcast. Talk about the playmakers. I don't even have the number right in front of me anymore, but I'm pretty sure it was 0.78, 0.79 actually, I think. Bad pass turnovers per 75 possessions or whatever. So for every, like you said, for every 75 passes he makes, less than one of them which it's not possible, Sean, but you get the point. Like less than one of them are going to be because of a bad pass, less than one of them he's going to have a bad pass turnover thrown in there, which is just insane. Again, my biggest drawback on Haliburton is in moments, lack of just aggression as a scorer, which makes him, in certain situations, really easy to switch against. Because unless you get the late game scenario or you get the opening quarter or opening minutes of a game 7, Haliburton, because he is so much looking for the next pass, it's pretty easy to just switch against him and completely shut him off as a scorer, in my opinion. Where now your counter argument to that on the Playmakers episode, well, doesn't that maybe lead into his playmaking? Well, okay, yeah, I suppose, because he's just going to swing it one more and you're going to find Pascal or whatever, or Miles Turner, I guess, who's now having a guard matched up on him in the post, which, sure, and that's maybe even a point in advantage for Haliburton as the decision maker and having that quick processor, but I do still think the lack of aggression as a scorer in general does hurt him, and for honestly that reason, because the pull-up three's there. He has enough shiftiness or just craftiness in general to get by his man one-on-one. But due to the volatility of his scoring and just lack of overall aggression at times, I do have him lower. But man, I wanted to put him 4.
I think that's fair. I also considered him for 4. Landed on him at 6. I think this playoff run kind of dispelled a lot of the switch heavy, because teams tried to switch against him. The Cavs tried to switch with Mobley and Allen. The Knicks tried to switch with Robinson and Cat.
Yeah.
He just consistently burned switches with blow-bys. And then it wasn't I'm going to blow by and then score. It was, I'm going to blow by, read the help, make the right read. And I just think, I don't really have any drawbacks with Haliburton's scoring, because the scoring pressure is always there. The thing I'm always wary of when it comes to low-volume scorers is okay, you're such a non-scoring threat that defenses can then not respect you, and then that bleeds into your playmaking value, because if the defense isn't going to react to what you're doing, you're not going to make plays. But Haliburton, to me, gets just enough across the threshold as a scoring threat to where the defense is always going to react to it. So when it's switching and he gets that blow by, they're going to collapse because he's got a 50% floater. He makes 75% of his shots at the rim. It's low volume, but he's not. If he gets to the rim and attempts a shot, he's not going to miss it. Really good pull-up three-point shooter. Has a little bit of a mid-range game. But to me, and maybe this is a hot take. We don't really do hot takes around here, but I was thinking about this when kind of ranking Haliburton. I really value his scoring because he never takes anything off the table. When Haliburton has a bad scoring game, it's because he was 2 for 7, not because he was 9 for 26. And that means you're not losing a lot of possessions when he's not scoring. So as long as the pressure is still there, that's all I care about with Haliburton scoring. And then if he gets an efficient 20, that's the bonus. So let's compare it for a second to Trae Young. I think at face value, most people would prefer Trae Young as a scorer. He's a better ball handler. Well, his handle's more functional for getting to different spots on the court, I'll say. Because Haliburton obviously is just super secure with it. Trae is a much better mid-range scorer. I'd say he's more dangerous with the floater. He's obviously more aggressive looking for his shot. Better space creator, better difficult shot maker, and difficult shot taker. But the problem is, when Trae gets into the playoffs, if he has a bad series, it'll be, yeah, I got my 25 points per game, but I was negative 6% relative true shooting. So actually, all of those 25 shots I'm taking are making my team's offense worse. Whereas Haliburton's I can go into a series and average 15 points a game, but because I only took 8 shots, I only lost my team 5 possessions on missed shots. I didn't lose 19 possessions, and I never turned the ball over while trying to score. So really, it's just those 5 possessions. And then every other time I made the right decision. I sped up the game with my pace. I found the right post-up player. And I just think Haliburton's scoring has so much value because he still hits the right pressure points without shooting his team out of games ever. Rarely ever do you see a tour date from Haliburton. And to me, he's still just a really valuable scorer because even in the playoffs this past year, 19 points per 75 on plus 1% relative true shooting. It sounds bad, but it's you were above average efficiency and you didn't take too many shots, so I'm fine with it. And then the other 80 times you touched the ball, we got a layup or a corner three. And then by the end of it, we're pushing an all-time great defense to 7 games because we had this all-time efficient playoff offense. Yeah, I think Haliburton, like you hit the nail on the head when you talked about the playmaking stuff. He's the best at pushing pace since Nash. He's the most accurate passer in the league. He's the quickest decision maker in the league. He's a threat to score from all 3 levels, even if it doesn't look as pretty as some other guys. And he can play off the ball very well. I just think it's the lack of like, I can put the team on my back and cook you in the half court as an isolation scorer. That's the difference for why he's not like 3 or 4. But he's about as good as you can possibly be as an offensive player without being a 30-point per game threat. Unless you're talking about Steve Nash, which obviously is just another, like, he's Diet Nash. That's what he is. He's Diet Nash.
I've never heard like Diet Nash be used more as a compliment than like than just now. Because normally when you hear like the diet player name is always like in a negative light.
Yeah. Well, because like Nash has all of these things, but then it's like I'm gonna make 46% of my threes. I'm gonna make 55% of my mid-range shots. I'm gonna get to the line a couple times and make 95% of those.
I've had like 2 40-point games in the playoff series.
Yeah, just like out of nowhere. And then also my relative true shooting percentage leads the entire NBA. Like Nash will have like Jokic efficiency with the Haliburton pace. What a player! What a player that was. But yeah, Diet Nash, like as a compliment, is what Tyrese Haliburton is right now. And like I said, pick and rolls, automatic advantage. Like even if you're gonna switch, he's gonna locate the mismatch, or he's gonna take advantage himself and do the blow by because he does have good change of pace, can consistently get 2 feet in the paint. And then it's just the no errors, and it's so easy to build around him. You just take 4 players who know what to do on the court. Like, dude, they'd have lineups with like Ben Shepherd, Obi Toppin, Thomas Bryant, and like they're scoring every possession. And obviously Obi Toppin's a good offensive player, but my point is like it's not like it's these supremely talented dual threats. It's just like, yeah, you know where to be on the floor. As long as you're in the right spot, I'm gonna find you every time. Haliburton's a crazy player, and I think it's really interesting how people could possibly be low on him. Like I don't get how are you low on that? How could you be low on that?
I love Luka. I love Steph. I love Brunson. Shea, big Shea guy, obviously. I don't know if I told you. There's like a player that I'm like starting a point guard, like a true point guard. I'm starting my offense with. It's Hallie. Like I'm just starting my offense from scratch. Like I want a point guard. I'm taking Tyrese Haliburton.
That's fair. So we both had him at 6. You haven't said your 7 yet. I can kind of guess who it'll be. So who's your 7?
Who do you think my 7 is?
Well, it's between 2 guys for me. I'm gonna guess your 7 is. Ooh, I don't even want to guess.
I hate it here.
I think I know it's one of 2 guys, but I don't know which one to go with. I'm trying to think of what you said for scorers and playmakers. I'm gonna guess your 7 is Jalen Brunson.
Well, see.
So it wasn't.
Fudge.
Wasn't?
This is hard. No,
so
because
it was
like
Steph Curry. Was it Steph Curry?
Yeah, which sucks because like logically, well, I do have Brunson higher than Steph on the scores. I do have Steph higher than Brunson on the playmakers. It's not by a lot.
I think we were flipped. I think I had Brunson 1 ahead of him on scorers and Curry 1 ahead of him on playmakers.
Okay. Yeah, this sucks. Man, this is like the second time now I've had to eat my words. At first it was, I'm never going to change my list on, mid podcast. And it was, hey, I love my list. And
this is awful, dude. I can't wait till we get to top 10 defenders.
Yeah.
That'll be even worse.
So I do have Steph 7. And this sucks because Steph is just awesome, man. He's one of the best. I mean, we're just going to go pound for pound here. Obviously, greatest shooter of all time, duh. The fact that they see, this is why this sucks, because if you want to talk about a player that just raises the floor of their offense so perfectly, some of the lineups that they were running out there with Steph before he went on his like like his quiet protest phase or whatever, those lineups were just disgusting.
Steph, GP2, Buddy Hield, Draymond, and
Trace Jackson Davis. and they would compute somewhat of a like average NBA offense.
I want to real quickly like take a moment to appreciate, like, harp in on that point. I mentioned this during the Playmakers episode. Steph on the court, Jimmy off the court last year had a 120 offensive rating. And those are the types of lineups they were fielding out. Like, it's so crazy. It's so crazy.
The pressure that Steph just creates, man, on a play-in, play-out basis. The fact that he's the only player in NBA history that you legitimately have to guard the moment he basically forget half court. The moment he like is walking past the opposing side's 3-point line, you are picking up Steph from there in fear that he's just gonna launch it.
I'm picking him up as soon as he pulls into the VIP parking lot.
I mean, I would have said that, but about? You know.
What are we talking about?
Like, the only player in NBA history that you actually have to do that for. Like, so, like, you know, some schemes, like, you know, we'll pick you up or whatever. We'll try to apply some pressure. No, you actually have to do that with Steph.
Yeah.
One of the best guard screeners of all time. The amount of different stuff they could do with Steph in the half court because of that. And then, honestly, what's even more impressive about Steph is the fact that legitimately I had a question mark about Steph heading into the playoffs. Like, could he, at this stage of his career, he's what, 30, going to age 36, I want to say. Like, can he carry that much of an offensive burden against such a physical, tough, gritty defense like the
Steph Curry is about to turn 38 this season, by the way.
Okay, so I gave him a year.
That's crazy.
And the fact that Steph very clearly just like walked into that Houston series, and okay, yes, was there a bad game or two like that game 5?
5 and 6.
Yeah, like super inefficient game 6, struggled in game 5. Yes. But man, game 1, game 3, game 7.
Game 1 was ridiculous.
Stupidest shot making performances ever. Dude. Or one of his better shot making performances. I think I got a little hyperbolic with the ever.
No, I agree with you though. No, that like the shots he was making
the one on the sideline.
Yep. Beyond comprehension. He's facing the crowd while doing a fadeaway 3.
And then you faced an elite playoff defense in the second round, and it looked like you were going to get a repeat of it until he obviously has the hamstring injury, which, by the way, so glad they just said, no, we are not rushing you back, because I was having an argument with some people in the moment, like, dog, I get it, their window's closing, but your window is shut if you bring Steph back too early, and he kind of has a harden where he's just never the same after that. Your window's closed. It's cooked regardless. So, no, if it's sacrificing a playoff series in the second round against a team, I think we both picked Minnesota anyway in, I could be trying to have revisionist history and make us look better.
I know I did, yeah.
Yeah, so, and honestly, just pulling hairs. Outside of Giannis, and honestly, like, I can very easily see your argument for Steph above Giannis, because what I'm about to say still actually maybe makes the point for Steph over Giannis. Outside of Giannis, Steph is very clearly, I don't know if very clearly is the right word, but outside of Giannis, for me at least, I can't even say that I step above two of the guys here on the playmaking list, but I will say Steph, outside of Giannis, does have the lowest level of, oh wait, that was because of gravity. Okay. Steph does have the lowest level.
Get your point out, man.
My bad. Damn, I hate it. Steph has the lowest level of like variety of passes that he can make as a like pick and roll distributor, or as a just pure passer in general. I would just flat out say he's probably the weakest passer out of the guys here. That's why I wanted to say. I was looking at my playmaking list, and then I saw that Steph above that, but gravity argument. But simply as a passer, the weakest passer, not named Giannis here. And I honestly don't even have like the best reasoning ever for having Giannis above Steph.
Vibes. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hashtag vibes. Steph's awesome. Can obviously still craft a championship level offense around him. Even though like the Warriors have had the same shtick for basically 12 years now as an offense, it's because Steph Curry is one of the best players of all time.
Yeah, and I think I'll just quickly rehash like the reason to be lower on Steph is kind of what I talked about in the scorers and playmakers videos or podcasts rather. I think sometimes careless turnovers just like kind of makes a little, sometimes just boneheaded passes that
Like
are just easily
2.5
avoidable.
bad pass turnovers
Yeah,
for a low volume
easily
playmaker.
avoidable turnovers within that motion offense where he kind of just like will like hook it over his head lazily after drawing two. More reliant on secondary playmaking, like we talked about, like connectors to
Yep.
kind of create, like extend the advantages that he creates.
Yep.
Also, not really much of an interior scoring threat anymore. What made him such a ridiculous player back in like 2021, 2016, 2017, all those years was, hey, I'm the greatest shooter ever. And I'm also arguably the greatest guard finisher ever. And I'm going to get there with volume. At this point in his career, doesn't really get all the way to the rim much, kind of settles for the mid-range pull-up or the floater. And then when he does get to the rim, not quite as efficient as a finisher. So just a little bit less interior scoring pressure. Makes him a little bit more vulnerable to switching because he can't like blow by mismatches as easily. More vulnerable to length than in years past. But I had a take that I've kind of been waiting to get off until this moment.
Am I walking off set? Let's see.
For basically my entire like existence as an analyst since like we'll say like 2020 or 2021. I don't even really know if I deserve that title, but just like since I really started diving into the sport at like an analytical level, I've maintained the take that Kobe Bryant is the greatest shot maker ever. The versatility of the shot making, the difficulty of the shot making. I am at a point now where I think it's Steph Curry, and I don't really know how much of a discussion there is because he's the only guy I've seen consistently take and make shots that no matter how many times you watch it, you can't wrap your head around it. Like that game one of the Houston series, it's like, yes, Houston was supposed to be the defense for Steph. Remember the last time they had played before that, he shot like
That was
three
the
for
big talking point the entire time
Yeah,
heading into that series.
It was like 2 for 13 or something like that. Everyone was like, Amen Thompson is the Curry stopper. All of these athletic, lengthy wings are just going to switch across the board, and they're going to take Steph out of the game. Game one, he goes in. Amen's full court pressing him away from the ball. They're switching everything. He can't get a lick of room, and he just burns them off of tough shot after tough shot after tough shot. Ends that game, I think, 13 for 19 from the field in a game that ended with a score of like 88 to 84. And it's like, what are we doing? What are we actually doing? Because then it's like, he makes you pick your poison to such an extreme level. Like, even, I do think he's regressed at this point, but going back to the 2022 Celtics series, it was the first 4 games, we're going to play drop coverage. And he's just walking into pull-up threes or pull-up middies. And then it's like, all right, he has this 43-point classic finals performance in game 4. Game 5, we're going to start trapping. He shoots terribly, but Golden State's offensive rating goes up.
Because like 120 that game or something.
Yeah, because now we're playing 4-on-3 the entire game. And there's nothing you can do to avoid that level of, like, the only thing you can do at that point is switch. And then it's like, if you don't have the facilities to switch all 5 positions, Steph is going to create at least 20 advantages a game. And there's nothing you can do about it. That's why that Minnesota series could have gotten really messy. Because Minnesota's not going to switch Gobert onto Steph. And they're not going to, like, then it's like now you have to do a bunch of pre-switching, and the motion offense knows how to take advantage of that. Steph's going to pass and relocate. They're going to force Gobert into the action. He's not going to switch. At some point, you're getting an advantage. It might be a Steph pull-up 3. It might be a 4-on-3. Steph's advantage creation is just so inevitable. And we talked about Giannis having like maybe the best superpower with the ability to get to the rim. Obviously, the greatest superpower is Steph shooting. It always has been. It always will be. Probably in NBA history. And probably for the remainder of our lives. We probably won't see anything like that again. So even though he's regressed, I still have Steph 4th on my list. And I actually even considered him for 3. Pretty heavily.
So, I do want to quickly touch on the shot making argument you made with Steph and Kobe.
Yeah.
I think what a Kobe supporter in that scenario would default to is I think they're going to default to maybe the consistency in which, like, not consistency, but like how often Kobe is taking these tough shots.
Yeah.
Like, I think the argument for Steph is going to be, like, against Steph would be like Steph can rely at least somewhat on the motion offense. I mean, you have the triangle or whatever, but I think the more consistency in terms of
Agreed.
easier shots we're going to get for Steph, where the lack of spacing in Kobe's heyday and even like some of the triangle stuff, like you're going to get a couple of easy, clean looks for Kobe, but a lot of that is so much self-created, and he is facing all these defenders all the time, crowding his space and still being able to hit those tough shots. I'm not gonna like combat that though. I think it's like a completely fair take. I do think like a Kobe fan will have severe pushback with that, but
yeah. And also another guy I want to throw out there is KD. I don't know what to do with KD as a shot maker because it's like every shot is easy for him because he sees over the defense. So do we penalize his shot making for that? Like it's like because if you look at those stats from Synergy that track like shot expectation, like expected points per possession versus the shot profile, and KD's always like number one by a landslide, and it's like, whoa. The shots that are supposed to be difficult, he just looks over the defender. So, like, what do we do with that? I also think Steph suffers from that, too, though, because it's like, you talk about the consistency of difficult shot making. A 30-foot pull-up three is supposed to be the hardest shot in the court.
Yeah.
And he makes them at, like, a 38% clip. So it's like, well, like, that is supposed to be a really difficult shot. And then it's just like, well, it's 1.1 points per possession when you're Steph Curry. And then it's like, he's such an unreal shot maker. I do understand the hang back though with like some of these other guys being maybe more reliable with the ball in their hands as engines at this point in their career. Like Brunson, for example, we could carry this into a Brunson discussion.
I'm assuming Brunson's your 5.
He's my 5 and he's your 4,
yeah.
I assume.
Yeah.
And that's the argument so yeah, I had Brunson and Steph kind of back and forth. Like that was a very back and forth discussion for me internally. And it's like, yeah, the argument for Brunson would be put the ball in his hands. We need heavy lifting on offense. There are very few, really in NBA history, more reliable than Brunson.
Never going to turn the ball over. Very capable playmaker and just flat out good passer. Can create and score from all 3 levels, regardless of the defender. I've talked about this so much. The degree of counters that he can go to in one-on-one isolation against anybody. There doesn't seem to be a singular defender that like bothers him. You could go the bigger, more athletic wing into Sar Thompson, and it's okay, cool. And the clutch, I'm just gonna ice you, and I don't even remember what move it was, but I'm gonna create so much separation. I'm gonna just walk into this 3. He's just awesome, bro. He's awesome. Never turns the ball over. I think to a certain extent, I do think you're gonna have to have a certain roster with Jalen Brunson. Maybe not to the extent of some of the other guys here. Like, I don't think he's as roster dependent as Luka. I think that's like decently fair for some. And again, the last iteration of Luka that we saw, where
I agree.
Like I'm talking about, like I've been saying, where Luka's pretty lopsided dependent for his playmaking and his ability to pick apart the defense, etc. I don't think Brunson's to that extreme. But I do think like there is. I don't think that there is this roster of horrendous players and like Brunson's just it doesn't matter. But with that being said, man, can do everything with the ball in his hands. Not this super clean off-ball fit, but like a capable enough, I mean, super capable enough spot 3-point shooter where it's like, it's fine, it's serviceable. Yeah, man, like honestly, just the fact you could put the ball in his hands 100 times a game and you're going to walk out of there with 2 turnovers max against every defensive coverage imaginable. Like there's something to that, and he's a perfectly good playmaker. Not the Haliburton level playmaker or Luka or some of the other guys that we've talked about that might have to be on the list, but perfectly good enough to combine himself with like probably not named Shea, the best guard isolation scoring bag in the league. And there's just something to it where down the stretch of a game, like Shea isolation, Jokic post up, Jalen Brunson isolation.
I think Brunson isolation might have topped that list for me last year too.
So
like it's just what I talked about with KD. It's like when there's 2 minutes left in the game and it's a tie game, and not even just like a specific action. How many guys who's maybe I'll frame it like this. Like with KD, I was like, you get him the ball in the pinch post, then how many more guys do you want? But with Brunson, it's just simply like 95-95, 2 minutes left. How many guys would you rather have on the floor for your offense than Brunson? It's like maybe 1, maybe 2, and that's it. Gets to his spots with ease because of a unique physical profile where he's really low to the ground, really shifty, change of direction, herky jerk, but then also bulldog strength. Ridiculous shot maker from every spot on the court. Now is like adding like a 40% pull-up 3 with volume to the bag, makes him a dynamic pick and roll and isolation scorer, can post up. And like what you said,
the guard
just a problem for every matchup. It's like, You want Dennis Schroeder on me, full court pressure? Well, he's small. I'm going to throw my shoulder into his chest, bump him off, and get to the mid-range with ease, or get to my 55% floater, or whatever he shoots. Or I'm going to draw 12 fouls and get to the line and make 88% of those. Oh, you want to put Asar Thompson on me? Well, let's see if this young guy has discipline, because I'm going to bait him into fouling out in like 10 minutes. He has like something he can poke at with every single type of defensive player. And then very consistently we see in the series that the Knicks lose, it's never a function of Brunson not being able to produce offense. Like that Pacers series maybe leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and then you look back and you're like, wait, Brunson averaged 30 points and 8 assists on like 62% true shooting. It's like, oh yeah, he was just fine. He was just fine. He always gets his game off. And that was with Nembhard full court pressing him. We saw what Nembhard did against Shea. Couldn't do that against Brunson.
Yeah.
Brunson's a freakishly good offensive player. I also do think a little bit of untapped off-ball potential, like you said, really reliable catch and shoot guy. Used to play off of handoffs a lot with iHeart. I think he can play off the move like that. Also, just a super quick decision maker off the catch. But then it's like chips are down. We're in the half court. We need buckets. The methodical on-ball game makes him just freakishly good. The only reason I have him 5th below Steph instead of 4th is kind of what you talked about. I do think he's the hardest guy out of my top 7 to put high-end talent next to.
Yeah.
Like, let's go down the list. Like, what does Brunson and Donovan Mitchell as a duo look like? Or what does Brunson and this is a stupid one. This would never happen. I was going to say Brunson and Trae Young.
All right, man.
Like, what are we doing? No, but like, in all seriousness, when you get to these higher end offensive players, I do think the goal is to win a championship. Who can we pair you next to? And like even Brunson and Giannis feels like a super clunky fit to me. And it is like, yeah, Brunson and LeBron also feels like a clunky fit to me. The only guy really that two guys that I'm like, yeah, I definitely think Brunson could play with you out of the main guys we've talked about are Anthony Edwards and KD.
Yeah.
Maybe Tatum too. Maybe Tatum.
KD is, that KD fit would be awesome.
Yeah, well, because all Brunson needs is corner 3-point shooters. Like, if you give him, that's why I love the Mikal and OG on both sides, because they're both really good corner 3-point shooters.
Yeah.
And they're going to get a ton of looks. I actually think the Knicks, like, this is kind of off topic. The Knicks offense is really underrated. They have a really freaking good offense going into next season.
Yeah.
Now didn't they just hire Mike Brown too?
Yep.
I believe.
Just hired Mike Brown. I really like, they hired Chris Gent, who was the Lakers offensive coordinator 2 years ago. I mean, I put a tweet out about that being a sneaky good hire, and somebody was like, yeah, not really praising what, comes from Charlotte, but no, Gent's a good offensive coach. Mike Brown, I think, has had good offensive teams, specifically Sacramento more recently, but
yeah.
All right.
That'll be interesting. Before we get into the top 3, let's do these 10 through 4s. You can start us off.
Yeah, so for me, number 10, LeBron James. Number 9, Jayson Tatum. Then we get into a tier for me that I think is full of guys that I would classify as championship offense level number 1s. There we go. Anthony Edwards, number 8, kind of by himself. I don't think he's quite next to Steph, Hallie, Steph Curry at 7, Tyrese Haliburton at 6, Giannis at 5, Jalen Brunson at 4. I felt really, really bad about how my 7 through 4 wound up, and like Tyler's list is completely different. Like literally spot for spot, 7 through 4 is different, and that's all right. I could very easily see these 4 just completely mixed up depending on the person I'm talking to.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I'll read my 10 through 4 real quick. So I got 10 KD, 9 Tatum, 8 Mitchell, 7 Giannis, 6 Haliburton, 5 Brunson, 4 Steph. What's so funny about that is my original draft of this list had Tatum 10, LeBron 9. I think Mitchell was already 8. Then it was Haliburton 7, Giannis 6, Steph 5, Brunson 4. Just to show you how like unconfident I am in these exact placements. It's all about the ranges. For me, 7 through 4 teetering into number 3 is like kind of a range. These are the guys that I think could be a championship number 1. And then 8 through 12 for me is like flip a coin. I think this is easily, this should, besides the top, like just players in general, this is probably the hardest list we're going to do. This is just so difficult because there's so many players that are so good at offense right now. But let's move on to number 3. I'm sure we share the same number 3. My number 3 is Luka. Yours is Luka as well. we could have a in-depth discussion, but I feel like we've said everything about Luka that needs to be said. Ridiculous on-ball scorer, can do literally everything on ball. Last year had like a loss of burst and agility that kind of prevented him from being as big of an isolation creator. A little bit more vulnerable to switching, especially with the fact that the Lakers didn't have a lob threat, which to your point kind of needs a specific roster construction where it's like I have multiple three-point shooting threats, I have one big rim runner, and I'm going to manipulate the backline defense to just play my game of cat and mouse. That's where he's at his best. But it's like, yeah, I can make every pass in the book. I can create out of any situation. I'm an all-time great shot maker. I can handle the ball 100 times, and yeah, I'll turn it over 3 or 4 times, but it's like because I'm trying super difficult passes, not because I can't handle the ball. Yeah. I'm huge. I'm going to destroy mismatches. Okay. I think the limiting factor with Luka is, of course, just not a big off-ball presence. I think he's improved as a catch-and-shoot guy. I think he's improved as a quicker decision maker off the catch, but in general, still not much off ball value there. Then, like I said, not as big of an isolation creator, just specifically last season. So I do think the two guys above him have a little bit more on ball value, probably just from last season. But then, yeah, and then the other point would be the other two guys to me are much better at pushing pace. I think Luka is just very methodical in his approach and kind of tends to slow the game down as opposed to speeding it up like we talked about with Haliburton. And that has its advantages, but it also has its drawbacks when it's like the defense is always going to be set.
Yeah, I think that Luka obviously is great. And I've made this argument before. I think Luka, honestly, I think the perception on Luka as an offensive player is only going to get better, especially with this new, conditioning regimen that he's taken a lot more seriously heading into next year. Because I think, honestly, his shape or like his condition as an athlete over the past 2 seasons, one of the biggest reasons why I do think he's so dependent on having a lob catching big now, because of a point you brought up in the playmaking episode specifically where Luka, okay, cool. If you want to take away the lob threat in theory by just switching, okay, cool. But Luka 2022, 23, really, but even just before the past 2 years in general, Luka was still one of the best players on the planet, just beating you from a standstill, which is going to put so much pressure on the defense. It caused the defense to rotate. And now Luka is still getting all these assists and creating from advantages and ultimately finding his teammates. But over the past couple of years, that has really post-knee injury with the Clippers. Post-knee injury with the Mavericks, excuse me. He's just been so reliant on the spread pick and roll game and having the Livelies or the Gaffers of the world, or just a defense to play a certain coverage and force them to tag in the low man, and that's how he was creating advantages and getting the defense to be in rotation. Where, assuming Luka fully back in shape, fully healthy, that shouldn't be an option anymore. And as a matter of fact, you want to switch, that's cool. Good post-entry passer, can make every pass in the book. So now, hey, we're getting Aiden in the post. Or I'm just going to cook my man one-on-one from a standstill. And now Austin Reeves is going to get a booty butt naked corner 3 because I caused the defense to collapse. So I do think there is a lot better to come from Luka as an offensive engine. And the fact that Luka, I guess at his floor, is in a range from 3 to 5 probably, or 3 to 7 maybe, or whatever the case may be. Like, the fact that this is his floor as an offensive player is so ridiculous because Luka Doncic at his ceiling is one of the best half-court offensive engines of all time. There's some drawbacks, like I said, the pace that he plays with. He's going to have some bad turnovers in there. But again, it's the gunslinger. It's I'm trying to make every ridiculous pass possible, and we're just going to live with it. So Luka's awesome. He's 3 for me.
Yeah, Luka to me, I kind of had him locked into a pretty tight range. Like I could see him as high as 3, maybe 2 if you're lower. Actually, I'm just gonna reveal my list because I actually think it's pretty etched in stone. 2 Shea, 1 Jokic. I'm sure you would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think if you're very low on Shea for whatever reason, sure you can get Luka up to 2, but I feel good about Luka at 3, and I can't really see him under 4. If you want to have Steph 3, I'm not gonna be mad at it, but I really can't see Luka 5, 6, 7. I feel good about him at 3 and 4. No. But The thing with Luka that's really interesting to me is this is clearly to me the best version of him, and maybe 2024, but these last 2 years, best version of him as a shot maker. The pull-up three is just better than it was when he first entered the league. The mid-range game is way more advanced.
Has all, he can go to.
Yeah, the crafty foul drawing, all that stuff. Just surgical perimeter player. But when he first entered the league, and we'll say 2020 bubble and then 2021, that's when he was at his best at change of pace. That's when he was at his best as like just like a dynamic, I'm going to get to the rim or I'm going to go to this pull-up three. And I do think that allowed him to create more volume offense than these past couple of years. And of course, he's a ridiculous finisher around the rim. So he's getting to these like 56% floaters or 77% layups on demand. And then he just has these playoff series where he gives you 36 points per game and like 11 assists. Just creates so much offense. But what I think gets overlooked with Luka is that there was a super brief intersect of the 2020 burst and the 2024 shooting. And it was like the first half of the 2023 regular season before they traded for Kyrie and before he had a minor injury. There was like a 2-month stretch where he had the burst and the driving and he had the 38% pull-up three going. And that version of Luka specifically was like the best on-ball player I've ever seen in my life. It was like perfect offense. That's when he had the 73-point game, I'm pretty sure as well.
I think so.
That version of Luka was like damn near a perfect offensive player. They were actually like starting to get him to buy into like pushing pace with outlet passes and stuff too. Then when Kyrie got there, he grew his off-ball game a little bit with like doubling his catch and shoot 3-point attempts. I think if this like new regimen Luka like gets back to that level with the current shot making and craft, we could be talking about number one. Like we could be having that discussion for number one offensive player. But just based off of the last version we saw of Luka, I feel good about him at 3. I don't even really think
there's not a discussion for Shea in Jokic.
Yeah, that's
He's done this like, so many times.
He could end this year. Like let's just do the spark notes, right? Shea, all-time great isolation scorer,
doesn't turn
really
the ball
efficient
over.
Pick and roll scorer, doesn't turn the ball over, ridiculous shot maker, can get his game off against every type of defense, beats double teams, beats zone coverage, beats a packed paint with his mid-range shot making,
unreal
gets to the line a
level
lot,
of counters.
makes all of those. Yeah, it's just, and then like not a super advanced playmaker, but will make the right reads when he draws aggressive attention.
Not
and
a
then with Jokic,
passer necessarily.
With Jokic, it's just what?
The argument against Jokic and maybe in favor of Shea is not a ball handler. You're relying on some of these other guys to set him up. But then it's
like, yeah, I can do literally everything on offense. I'm going to have a near 70% true shooting. I'm going to make 45% of my threes now. I'm the most efficient post scorer since Shaq. I'm the best passer since maybe Magic. Who knows? Yeah, I don't think we need to waste the people's time with Jokic and Shea. That feels pretty, like, we've talked about those two head-to-head like 50 times at this point. And it's like, yeah, I feel nauseous bringing it up again. So
yeah,
I'm good on that.
I'm cool.
Any other points before we throw up this final list?
No, honestly, like 3 through 7, I hated. But no, all seriousness, man. The really, really stupidly talented league, man. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for next year.
I'm glad we were able to land on like a good spot where like we both feel really good about 1 through 3 after just the nightmare that was 11 through 8 and 7 through 4. Let's read off our finalists before we get out of here.
Yeah, so number 10, I have LeBron James. Number 9, I have Jayson Tatum. Number 8, I have Anthony Edwards. Number 7, I have Stephen Curry. Number 6, I have Tyrese Haliburton. Number 5, I have Giannis Antetokounmpo. I have Jalen Brunson at 4, Luka Doncic at 3, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 2, and Nikola Jokic at 1.
And for me, I had KD at 10, Tatum at 9, Mitchell at 8, Giannis at 7, Haliburton at 6, Brunson at 5, Steph at 4, Luka at 3, Shai at 2, and Jokic at 1. I feel all right about my list after talking it through. I felt a lot worse about it before we did that. I was like, I don't even know if I can justify any of these placements. Now I feel pretty good about it. But, yeah, I mean, this was probably the most difficult episode we've had in terms of, like, getting our takes off because it's just nasty how stacked the league is.
league so stacked, it took me like 3 minutes to get into an argument. I mean, to get into a point, and just stuttering my way through, like trying to. I think I'm not even starting the point yet. I'm like trying to find my way to get there.
Okay, so here's basically my point. Like 5 different ways you said that, and I was like, bro, are you gonna tell us the point or not?
Who was that for? Steph, or was it Hallie?
I think it was
maybe?
Steph. I think it was Steph. We really appreciate you guys listening. If you're still here, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, a 5-star rating is very much appreciated. If you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, turn those notifications on. Also, very much appreciated. Let us know down in the comments what your top 10 offensive list would look like. I'm very curious to see if you think we missed anyone, or if you have a similar range to what we did, kind of breaking it into 3 or so tiers. Make sure to follow us on social media. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that good stuff, at @TylerBritton_. And of course, my main channel, Hoop Venue, is where I'll be posting all of my NBA content as soon as I make my return to the content space. Sean's on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. He's on Instagram at Sean_Davis23. He's on YouTube at The Sports Headline Show or the Los Angeles Lakers Network. He's getting into his power ranking series. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Your power ranking series for the upcoming season. So go check that out. Once again, we really appreciate you guys listening all the way through, and we will catch you guys next time with a somehow probably even more difficult list, the top 10 defensive guards.